Does your business struggle to hit its product margins? Do you also struggle to get your products out of the door to the correct lead times for your customers? I'm John Hurrell, Head Coach of Enterprise Coaching Limited, and this video is going to look at how waste in the process can be categorised into 7 wastes and how those things can help you make the business more efficient and therefore hit your margins and get your delivery dates correct. So first of all, we want to look at the reasons why you should be looking at the wastes in your processes. Every product you make will have some sort of cost on materials, some sort of cost on labour, cost on overheads, and then also you'll obviously want to make some profit margin on top of that. Material prices tend to vary, but quite often will rise. Labour prices will tend to go up as time goes by. Overheads may, if you're lucky, stay the same, but probably will also rise, and that will put a squeeze on your margin. At the same time, customers are going to be putting pressure on you to reduce your prices potentially. So what we need to do is need to understand how we can make your processes more efficient and therefore make you more competitive for your customers. So we need to think about your processes from receiving the order or the inquiry all the way through, going through the order process, being manufactured, testing, whatever it might be, and then out through to dispatch to the customer. All processes will either be categorised as value added or non-value added. Value added processes are ones which are changing the state of the product, so this might be in a machine shop, cutting the metal, drilling of holes, things like that. It could be assembling a product, it could be cooking if you're in a food environment. Non-value added processes are things that don't change the state of the product, so anywhere where the process is not moving the product forward towards its final destination. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the percentages of those processes to try and understand how you can then make things more efficient. Believe it or not, when you look at the processes from start to finish within your business of getting that product to the customer, you will find that in general in manufacturing only 5% of that process is adding any value to the product. 95% is classified as waste. So within the 95% non-value added processes, we can categorise that into the 7 wastes. We're going to use the acronym Tim Wood to look at these as a good way of remembering what the 7 wastes are when you're doing a waste walk around the factory to try and identify these problems. So the first one is transport of materials. Anywhere where you are having to move materials from one place to another, obviously the further you have to move it, the bigger that problem is. Double handling of materials, sometimes moving one pallet out of the way to get another one through, things like that. It's all wasting time. Sometimes products having to move backwards in the process. That's all wasted time, wasted effort, and therefore is the first one of those problems. The second one is inventory or stock holding. We've got raw materials, work in progress, we've got finished goods. We need to try and reduce that stock holding down to a sensible level. If you have a huge amount of raw materials in the business, you could have issues with damage or shelf life of materials. Obviously, if you've bought the material in, you have spent the money, but then it takes a long time to then get to the point of the customer paying you back for that raw material. Work in progress, obviously want to minimise the amount we have. The more work in progress you have in the factory, the more products you have sitting around not doing anything. They're potentially getting in the way. Again, they could get damaged. It could be stopping the flow of the products through the business also. And again, cash tied up in the business. But now you're starting to spend money on the labour side of it, so you're increasing that cost of the stock. And finally, finished goods, we want to try and reduce that down as much as possible, trying to get the product to the customer as quickly as we can so that we can therefore get paid for it and get the cash flow moving within the business, and also give us more space within the business. The more stock we hold, the less space we're going to have. So we want to reduce that stock, give us more space to potentially put more value added processes within the business. The next one is movement of people. So every time somebody has to move away from their process to go and collect something, to go and find a tool, to go and get some information from somebody, to go and collect some paperwork, that is taking them away from doing the value-added processes. So obviously we want to minimise the amount of time that people spend away from their process. The next one is waiting and delays. So every time that we cannot process forwards within the business and we have to wait or have a delay on what we're doing, that is going to cause a problem. Again, waiting for decisions to be made, waiting for tools or paperwork to turn up, and potentially waiting for the previous process to complete their stage before we can then move the product on to the next stage. Every time we can't move forward, again, is going to be a waste in the process, time delays, it's costing us money, and it's not getting the product to the customer. Moving on to overproduction now. If we are going to get an order for 100 parts, do we make 100 or do we make 110 just in case we have some problems? Okay. If we make 110, we may well lose some through the process, which is a problem on its own, but also if we end up with 105 at the end of the process, there's 5 that may well go onto the shelf, sit there for a long time, they may go obsolete, the design may change, they may go out of date if they're a shelf life product. And obviously every time we're overproducing something, we're doing all of the 7 wastes more times. So if we make 110 products, we do 10 extra sets of the 7 wastes, 10 extra sets of the 95% waste in the process, and therefore if we only can get to the stage where we can make 100 for an order of 100, you're reducing that extra wasted process down. Next, we've got over processing. So this is a process which doesn't work in the business. It's too complicated, it doesn't function properly. It can also be things like paperwork is too complex, or signatures have to be done too many times within a process where one signature would potentially do. It could be that you're not utilising a machine which is capable of doing much more. We're not using the process capability. So you may have a 5-axis machine centre that is producing very simple components because you haven't got capacity somewhere else. But at the same time, we're losing capacity on a higher value potential product that we could be doing more complicated things on, higher margin products, etc., etc. So trying to utilise the correct processes for the correct type of products is also important. And finally, defects and rework. Nobody wants to throw products in the bin, but it does happen. It may be that you make mistakes in the processing of the product. It could be that material is out of spec. It could be that paint finishes are not good enough, etc., etc. But everywhere where we either end up throwing a defect in the bin or we end up reworking a product is going to cause waste in the process. You can only add profit margin to a product once. Every time you have to rework, it's going to reduce that margin down and therefore cost the business money. It's also going to cause delays in the process. So in summary, if our customers are going to put pressure on price and we can't achieve margins and we also can't hit delivery dates, we need to be looking for these 7 wastes in our process. We know that 5% of processes within a business are actually adding value to the product, and we also know that 95% of it is non-value adding. Some of it is required potentially, but some of it can definitely be eradicated and streamlined. So using the acronym TIMWOOD to identify transport of materials, inventory, movement of people, waiting and delays, overproduction, overprocessing, and defects and rework in the process is a good way to think about how you can make your business more efficient and therefore hit the objectives that you want to. I've been John Hurrell from Enterprise Coaching. If you want to visit my YouTube channel, please look up Enterprise Coaching Limited, and also my website www.enterprise-coaching.co.uk. Thank you.